President Trump and the Department of Homeland Security have created an organization designed to communicate information to victims of crimes committed by removable aliens. The office, called VOICE, for the Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement Office, will act as a programmatic liaison between ICE and the known victims of crimes committed by removable aliens. Though not called out explicitly in the DHS memo authorizing this office, this action was likely the result of a number of sections of previous executive orders. In particular, Section 13 of the Executive Order Enhancing the Public Safety in the Interior of the United States calls for an Office of Victims of Crimes Committed by Removable Aliens, which will provide proactive, timely, adequate, and professional services to victims of crimes committed by removable aliens and the family members of such victims. In addition, Section 10 of the Executive Order Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States called for DHS to collect and report on any other information relevant to public safety and security as determined by the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Attorney General, including information on the immigration status of foreign nationals charged with major offenses. The funding for VOICE has been created by redirecting any and all resources that are currently used to advocate for the rights of illegal aliens to these efforts, stripping these aliens of any support the federal government might offer. This is unlikely to be the last word on these topics, as the existing executive orders call for further action. In particular, Section 9 of the Executive Order on the Interior Public Safety calls for the DHS Secretary to produce a weekly list of criminal actions committed by aliens in sanctuary cities. In particular, the Secretary is to utilize the Declined Detainer Outcome Report, a report of cases where local law enforcement agencies decline to pass criminals over to ICE, and make a public comprehensive list of criminal actions committed by aliens and any jurisdiction that ignored or otherwise failed to honor any detainers with respect to such aliens. So over the next few weeks, you can expect to see an office tasked with informing victims of crimes of the immigration status of the offender, VOICE. This office will officially liaise with victims in cases where the perpetrator of a crime is criminally removable. We will likely see the continued attacks on sanctuary cities as described in other provisions of these executive orders. In particular, one should expect that if implemented as described, this would produce a list of 250 to 300 crimes committed per week, matching the declined detainer report rate over the past several years, possibly increasing as the number of sanctuary cities grow. As instructed in the executive orders, all privacy rights of non-citizens or legal permanent residents are to be ignored by the Department of Homeland Security in implementing these orders, so one can expect that these may include personal details about individuals accused of these crimes. The net effect of these actions will be an ever-increasing number of publicly targeted reports of immigrant crime. The executive orders are not particularly clear on the implementation and how it should apply to legal immigration. As written, most of these efforts would also include legal immigrants in these reports. To give some context on how this information might be reported, the administration recently released a list of terrorist attacks that they considered underreported by the media. That list, spanning the years 2014 to 2016, resulted in a media frenzy where the media reported on every one of the events and how they had reported on it at the time it occurred. With the actions of VOICE and the requested actions regarding sanctuary cities, we can expect similar lists to be coming more often. And already, after the President's address to Congress, we are seeing a rehashing of the circumstances regarding some of the guests at the event in the media because of their involvement with immigrant crime. All of this attention will achieve one thing. It will make the American public drastically overestimate the risk of criminal activity by undocumented immigrants. This is a problem because it attracts unreasonable attention to a narrow subset of our overall criminal problem. As reported on by 538.org, immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, commit violent crimes at lower rates than native-born Americans. This isn't surprising. Non-citizens, even those here legally, face possible deportation if they are convicted of a violent crime, meaning such crimes carry a higher risk than they do for the US-born. This statement is based on research from a number of different groups and summarized in several different ways. The Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank, collected some of the research and, over examining more than a dozen different studies, found no statistically significant increase in violent crime correlated with additional immigrant population. For example, a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research finds that incarceration rates among immigrant populations are significantly and sometimes drastically lower than those of their native-born peers. According to the report, roughly 1.6% of immigrant males 18 to 39 are incarcerated compared to 3.3% of the native-born. The disparity in incarceration rates has existed for decades, as evidenced by data from the 1980, 1990, and 2000 decennial census. In each of these years, the incarceration rates of the native-born were anywhere from 2 to 5 times higher than that of immigrants. As another example, a study from Georgia State University looked at a sample of 150 metropolitan statistical areas and found that levels of recent immigration had a statistically significant negative effect on homicide rates and no effect on property crime rates. As the Cato Institute summarizes it, both the census data-driven studies and the macro-level studies find that immigrants are less crime-prone than natives. So why does this matter? Humans are bad at statistics. Overall, it's very easy for humans to recognize patterns and respond to them, but very difficult to develop an intuition for overall statistics. By reporting individual crimes committed by immigrants in sanctuary cities, the perception will be that there is a large amount of crime perpetrated by immigrants in sanctuary cities, even though statistically speaking, the rate committed by immigrants will be just as low as it is among the rest of the population. By releasing things like this as weekly lists, the 200 events that have been happening in this country every week for decades committed by undocumented immigrants will constantly be re-entering the public perception. This constant reinforcement will also result in a perception which is completely out of line with the reality and the statistics. Undocumented immigrants absolutely do perpetrate crimes in the United States. However, given the relatively low criminality among immigrants in all studies done on the topic, to constantly push this narrative in the faces of American people without the benefit of the statistical approach to back it up is likely to lead to incorrect perceptions of the actual impact of these crimes. This disingenuous approach to communication is likely to do more harm than good to our overall understanding of the situation.